Is Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones going to be the biggest fight in UFC history?
No. Bigger than Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez? When we're talking about the guy that created the champ thing, and now every fighter wants to be a bloody champ.
Does the UFC need Conor McGregor anymore?
Conor hasn't fought at all.
No.
If anything, he's done things to bring the company down.
Hello everybody, welcome to a brand new MMA show here on TalkSPORT. Talk MMA, we're going to bring you the latest news, have a bit of a debate about everything going on in the world of mixed martial arts. My name is Alex Ritchings. I'm joined by two very special guests here today. We'll go ahead and introduce them. First of all, Mr. Blake Harrison, actor, podcast extraordinaire, host of the MMA Fan podcast as well. Blake, how are you doing today?
Very good, mate. How are you?
Very good, man. Very good. Very good start to the new year. We've got a new show. We're going to talk about a lot of good stuff, I'm sure. So.
Absolutely, yeah, can't wait.
And we also, of course, have Kweku Afari here as well. Kweku, people are going to know you from the channel, but brand new talk show today. Are you ready to chat MMA?
I'm raring to go, man. I'm raring to go. Some good topics we've got our teeth to sink into. It's a good way to start 2025.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, we had a good start and to the year in terms of the news so far, and there's a bit of a buzz going on. We had a good end to the year as well, but I suppose main question on everyone's lips, really, something a bit relevant, a bit close to home, lads, as well, considering we have Tom Aspinall sitting there holding an interim title. He's not booked to fight the actual champion yet, Jon Jones. So the first question is, I mean, well, maybe angle towards you, Blake, but this is for everybody. Is Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones going to be the biggest fight in UFC history?
No.
And we shall expand on that, Blake.
We're starting there. I'm sorry to start 2025 in a cynical way. I don't know if everyone's going to be as cynical as me, but yeah, look, I mean, biggest fight in UFC history. Like, by what metric are we even measuring
That's
this?
the question. That's the question.
If we're measuring it by financial metrics, then absolutely not. No, Conor McGregor versus Khabib is, I believe, number one in terms of pay-per-views.
Sales,
It's what, sorry?
In terms of sales,
Yes,
2.4.
It's not going to top that, I don't think. I think if you're trying to measure this by finances, then I would make an argument that not only is this not the biggest fight in UFC history, it's not actually the biggest fight the UFC can make today. Because today, I believe they could also do Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira, which is a bigger fight financially than what Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones would be, in my opinion.
I'm not an economist, though. I'm not an economist. I'm here for the.
Well, I am.
Here for the
Kweku, okay? I am registered. No, I'm not.
Get that out there early. You know?
I'm here for the sentiment. I'm here for the feeling, and let's not get twisted. And I'm not ashamed to say it. The reason why I got into MMA is because of Conor McGregor. UFC 189, Conor McGregor versus Chad Mendes. It was what got me into the fight. It helped that it was Lawler McDonald too, the fight before that. But that's what really made me fall in love with the sport. And if you look at the top three ranked pay-per-view buys of all time, they're Conor McGregor fights. But the UFC's model is less beholden to pay-per-view buys now. They're getting bigger TV deals. The model is different. They are a bigger company. And so when I'm measuring the size of fights, I'm looking at the consequence of the fights.
Right.
And Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall, for me, is the most consequential fight in UFC history because of what comes after it, what happens after it.
And also where we are at the moment as well. I think you could say it just based on where we are in terms of where the sport has gotten to. I'm going to throw a wild card in here anyway, but you go ahead, Blake.
No, I just think in terms of like the language, like even if we're disregarding the finances, biggest fight in UFC history, like bigger than Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez? When we're talking about the guy that created the champ thing, and now every fighter wants to be a bloody champ. Yeah. No fighter now seems to really strive to be a long-time champion in their own division. You know, you've got like the likes of Demetrius Johnson, Anderson Silva, Jon Jones at light heavyweight, that you go, wow, what an achievement that was to be the champion for so long. Now everyone's like, no, I don't want to do 6 years of fighting the next man up. I just want to go up in weight, not cut weight, eat a few extra steaks and cupcakes, and now I can just fight the guy in the level above me. That's what that Conor McGregor-Eddie Alvarez fight did. Not to mention what it did in terms of propelling him into the stardom that led to the Floyd Mayweather fight. And that in itself bringing the UFC up to a whole nother level. And so I think biggest fight in history, absolutely not. What I will give you, and I think is absolutely true, is it's the most important fight that they could make right now in terms of going forward. Like, I think the heavyweight division massively needs this fight to happen, because if it doesn't, then we're staring at another sort of light heavyweight situation where it's like there's a huge contingent of fans that go, oh yeah, Tom's fine, but he would never have beat Jon Jones. And that will lead to the heavyweight title just not feeling as powerful as it should. And that's what I think. I think it's the most important fight they could make right now. 100% not the biggest fight in history of the UFC.
It's funny you should say that about the heavyweight title, because we kind of are already there, lads. I mean, Francis Ngannou took the lineal UFC heavyweight belt and he left. And that belt had never not been in the UFC, and now it's gone. I mean, it was actually outside the UFC for a period, but it came back. And no one got to take the legacy, the rub, the win streak off Ngannou. Like, usually, that's how we build our contenders. That's how we build our stars. They make their way up. They beat the champion. They take the legacy. They take the history. They take the champion's achievements, and they make it their own because they have passed them in ability. We have not seen that because no one went past Ngannou. He went. If no one goes past Jones, it's only going to get worse, Blake. I completely agree with you.
What I will say, following on from both of your points, and that's why I think this is the most important fight and the biggest fight they can make, because what comes after it, and again, I know Dana is the biggest naysayer, and he said he's never going to do business with Francis Ngannou. I remember Dana White saying he's never going to do business with Jon Jones. So he is a man that has changed his mind in the past.
He said a lot of stuff.
How dare you guys? I believe every single word that comes out of Dana's mouth. How dare you?
Well, I don't. And that's why I think that after this, there is a possibility that we can make not just the biggest fight in the UFC, not just the biggest fight in MMA, but the biggest fight in combat sports history. If you can get, and again, I'm rooting for Tom Aspinall. I'm a Brit. I want Tom Aspinall to win. But if you can get Jon Jones and Francis Ngannou locked in a cage together, you are printing money, because that's the fight I think that everybody wants to see. When you talk about the baddest man on the planet, that does not belong to a boxer anymore. The baddest man on the planet is the heavyweight champion in the UFC. Blake, you talked about the champ thing. The beauty of the heavyweight division is that there is nowhere to run. There is nowhere to go. That is the reason why it's the most. And for the longest time, the light heavyweight division was the blue ribbon division in the UFC. But right now, I feel like with the characters and the cast characters you've got in the heavyweight division, with Tom Aspinall going on a tear, barely getting out the first round any of his fights, I think the Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones, in my opinion, is the biggest fight in UFC history because of what comes after it.
Okay, let me throw something at you here, Kweku, because you've just made me think of something. You're starting this off,
I can tell that.
And you're giving it the whole Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones is the biggest fight in UFC history. But you have just mentioned Francis Ngannou. So if I could say to you now, what would be bigger, Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones, or Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones if they made it happen? Turkey Al-Sheikh comes in and throws loads of money at Dana and says, "Go on, just partner with the PFL for one fight." Is Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones bigger than Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones?
It is. But we don't get there until we have Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. That fight needs to happen. And maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment, right? Because let's not get twisted. I remember Khabib versus Conor. I remember everything that came with it. I remember the promos, obviously the dolly and everything that happened in New York, and the kind of horrible press conference where there was no fans there. It was such a long build up, and it culminated in the fight that wasn't necessarily the best fight, but what happened after it, Khabib jumping over the cage. I think that right now is the biggest fight in UFC history, and the pay-per-view buyers show that. But I do think that when we look back on fights that are made today, we're not going to be looking at pay-per-view buys. We're going to look at consequence. And for me, consequence means big. And I feel like this fight is the biggest fight in UFC history. But again, I can see where you're coming from, Blake. I can see where you're coming from.
You say we won't look back at pay-per-view buys. The first thing I did when I knew this was the question is I looked up what was the biggest fight in UFC history, and they come up with the pay-per-view buys.
I will say this though, lads. You're talking about pay-per-views. You're talking about maybe it will or it won't. But to throw a wild card at both of you, the UFC this year as a format might not appear in the same way we've always seen it. It's always been a pay-per-view model, but we're up for new negotiations. We might get the UFC on Netflix. And then if we get Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall on Netflix, then we might all be wrong. And it might very well be the biggest fight in UFC history because we don't actually know. So there's a little wild card to think about that as well for this year, because that totally could happen.
You're talking about like as if like the UFC partnered with Netflix or something like that, which you're absolutely right. We wouldn't obviously be looking at pay-per-views with that, but still, biggest fight in UFC history. I just think Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall does not compare to like in terms of if everything has been on Netflix over the last 10 years, let's imagine a world in which Netflix, some multiverse where Netflix and UFC partnered up 10 years ago.
Right.
I believe that McGregor Khabib, McGregor Diaz 2, these fights, McGregor Alvarez, I think would be ahead of what Jones Aspinall could do now. I think that Jones Aspinall is like a hardcore MMA fan's dream. We all need it. There is no fight we want more at the moment. Any hardcore MMA fan, there's no fight we want more at the moment than Jones v Aspinall. And I think that's true of everyone that knows the sport well. But if you are just a casual fan that goes, oh, I'll throw on a UFC thing because it's on or whatever it is, or, oh, there's loads of media about a certain fighter or fight, let me pay my money to whoever to buy the pay-per-view for that or whatever. If it was Netflix subscriptions, I still think that Jones Aspinall would not get the same kind of attention. It still wouldn't get, random people in the supermarket chatting about it in the same way that a McGregor fight has done in the past.
In the past, yeah, but unfortunately, like that's not actually the reality of what can happen, is it? And the reality might be, it might get advertised on Netflix and people in the supermarket are talking about it, especially if it's a supermarket in the UK and there's a British champion on your Netflix banner fighting for a world title, you know what I mean? But we don't know. Like.
And this is the final piece of my argument. When you look at a fight that was absolutely horrendous, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, those numbers are absolutely astronomical. So if the UFC does move to Netflix, there is every chance that the viewing figures, the amount of eyeballs on Aspinall versus Jones is actually more than the 2.4 million people that watched Khabib versus Conor McGregor.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think. I mean, talk about Kimbo Slice was one of the most watched MMA fighters forever because it was on CBS with like 6.5 million people watching it. You know what I mean? Like, nothing to do with pay-per-views, but that's just how it goes. All right, we've got to keep moving on, guys, because we've got a lot to talk about today. But let's just keep on topic for now, at least on this, because I want to ask you the question then. Like, are heavyweight fights in boxing, they typically are the biggest, except they're not because of Floyd Mayweather. In MMA, are heavyweight fights usually the biggest fights in our sport? Because Conor McGregor's kind of changed everything, hasn't he, really? And even if you were to say yes, traditionally, you had guys like GSP who always sold really well. In fact, I think Usman Masvidal is one of the top-selling pay-per-views of all time, and that's 2 welterweights, and that was all because of the hype Jorge had managed to generate for himself of the whole BMF thing. So I don't know if it's true, but I don't want to lead the question. I'll let you guys.
I think if Jon Jones didn't go up to heavyweight, the heavyweight division would not be as sought after by the fans as it is today. I think it's the Jon Jones effect that's done that. I think if we just saw Tom Aspinall beat Curtis Blades to become the undisputed heavyweight champion, and now we're looking at him fighting a Cyril Gane or a Sergey Spivak or Alexander Volkov for the second time, I think people are like, meh, heavyweight's not great. Tom's quite good, but heavyweight's not a great division. And I think, unfortunately, that's what I think is, I'm slightly going back here and I'm sorry, but like the Jones-Tom fight happening now is so important for Tom's legacy going forward. Because I've said this on the MMA Fan Show before, that I believe Tom Aspinall has the possibility of becoming the Demetrius Johnson of heavyweight, where he's just taking out guy after guy after guy for 5-6 years, but no one cares because they're not people that he's not fighting. He's got no Joker to his Batman. He's got, there's nothing there that kind of gets people really interested. If he beats, if John vacates and then he beats Cyril Gane and Jailton Almeida and Volkov again, it's like, no one's going to care. And it's just going to be like, who's Tom fighting this week? Oh, okay, cool. Like, and it's just not going to have the gravitas that we want it to for Tom. He's got to get that Jones fight.
And on the heavyweight division chat, I do feel like for the first time in a long time, and you touched on it earlier, Alex, it feels like the heavyweight division is like boxing. There's 3 people that have a piece of the heavyweight title.
Right, yeah.
Like we talked about Francis Ngannou, who's got the lineal heavyweight title. Then we talk about Jon Jones, who's got the actual UFC heavyweight title, and Tom Aspinall's the interim champion. So it's so segmented. I feel like we want unification. That's why I think there's such a clamor for this fight to happen. And let's not get twisted. We were all frustrated in the lead up to Jones versus Stipe. We were all frustrated with Jones dismissing the Aspinall fight. But all he did was make that fight 5 times bigger. He made us want it more. And I think by the time that fight does eventually roll around, I think that's the only fight that both men will fight in 2025. But by the time that rolls around, we will be thirsty and hungry for it. And people will be out in the masses to watch it because it's such a good fight. And for the first time, and I know Jon Jones towards the back end of his time in the light heavyweight division put forward performances that weren't that impressive. But for the first time in a very, very long time, he's going in the cage with somebody that we think can really, really hurt him.
All right, so it's a question that everyone was kind of asking last year. Some people said yes, some people said no. But do you think anybody actually believes that Jon Jones is scared of Tom Aspinall?
No. Jon Jones isn't scared of anybody. Jon Jones is not scared of anybody. And like, when you talk about the baddest man on the planet, that title belongs to Jon Jones, and not for all the good reasons. He is a bad man with bad intentions, and he doesn't fear anybody. He's playing a game. What Jon Jones is enjoying is, for the longest time in his career, he was the best in the world, but it wasn't necessarily the biggest pay-per-view draw. It wasn't necessarily the most popular fighter on the roster, but right now he is that. Right now, Jon Jones is a bona fide superstar. When he walks in the room, when he walks into a press conference, everybody wants to hear what he's saying. And I think he's just reveling in it. But I don't think Jon Jones is scared of any man that walks planet Earth.
I like it. Blake?
Well, what you said was, does anyone believe that? And some people are stupid, so some people do believe that.
Stupid, dude.
But I would. It's funny, isn't it? Because I suppose it's like, is he afraid of fighting Tom Aspinall? No, he's not afraid of fighting Tom Aspinall. If they squared up to each other in a parking lot or anything like that, I don't think he'd run away or anything like that. But is he concerned about his legacy when he stares at Tom Aspinall on the contract? 100% he is. That's why he's so desperately saying, well, Alex Pereira. He was talking about getting FU money to fight Tom, but when it comes to Alex Pereira, it was just like, oh yeah, I'll fight Alex.
Yeah.
So it's like, so that in itself to me says, fear is a strong word and scared is a strong word, but there's something in there, and he's not scared of being in the cage with him, but he's scared of losing.
Yeah.
And that is what I think it is. So it depends on kind of how you're looking at the word scared and fear and stuff like that. But for sure, I think he sees any other heavyweight's name on the contract, or if he sees Alex Pereira's name on the contract, he's signing it without even blinking.
Yeah.
As soon as he sees Tom Aspinall's name on that contract, a little bit of fear starts to creep in.
I think it's risk is really the word, right? He's trying to manage the risk of his next, opponent, as he's managed his entire career. And to think that this guy is actually scared, I think it's a scary thought to hurt a legacy that you've protected and built for so long. But this is also a guy that was getting blackout drunk the week of fights because he thought he would just beat the guy up, and that's literally he's not scared at all. He's like, he's flippant, dismissant of his opponents. So that's probably not happening now, but I think risk is the word. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I do think that the frustration from MMA fans is that he's being a bit of a hypocrite, because when he was running through the light heavyweight division and beating Shogun and beating Rampage and beating Lyoto Machida and beating Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, and just taking out these legends, they were allowing him to build his name. You kind of have to do the job. When you're in combat sports, you have to do the job. There's an act of service that you have to do. I think Stipe done it for Jon Jones. Nobody in their right mind thought that Stipe Miocic, after not being in the cage for 3 or 4 years, was going to beat Jon Jones. That fight only really served Stipe's bank account and Jon Jones' legacy. And I feel like Jon Jones isn't doing the job. And the job is to, if you are that guy, go and prove you're that guy. MMA, the beauty of it, and the reason why it's so popular and more popular than boxing right now, in my opinion, is that it's the man that beats the man, and you know who's the best. And unfortunately, Jon Jones, a man who kind of reveled in that, a man who came to or ascended in that as a result of beating legends, he's not doing the service to Tom Aspinall, and that's why I feel like MMA fans are very frustrated.
Yeah, the hypocritical thing is what a lot of people have said, because Jon beat I think 5 champions in like 1 year, and then he's saying, oh, Tom's not beat any champions. Who are these? It's because there aren't any at heavyweight. Ngannou left. Everyone else has retired. There are none. And obviously the fan base knows that. And that is partly why I think they're being frustrated. Does that translate them into saying, Jon is scared? I don't know, Blake.
Well, let's just talk another bit about like just how protective Jon is about his legacy historically here, because, and I'm going to play slight armchair expert, not armchair, armchair psychologist here, but like you're talking about the fact that he was getting like blackout drunk before fighting Gustafsson in the first fight and stuff like that. Could he be doing that because he's got a built-in excuse to himself?
Sure.
Like, but I didn't take it seriously. When an opponent turned around last minute and he was supposed to fight Chael Sonnen,
151.
He stepped back and said, no, I'm not going to fight Chael Sonnen on short notice, which led to Dana White going mental. Now he blames his team. But at the time, I'm pretty sure he didn't have many nice words to say about Jon Jones. And that was one of the only times that UFC had to pull a whole event, didn't they? Because of that, because Jon Jones did not want to fight Chael Sonnen on short notice. And we think about how common it is these days for a fighter to go, look, Shavkat did it against Ian Gary and he didn't even get the belt opportunity there. But just to take a short notice fight, Islam Makhachev with Volk the second time.
Tom did it against Sergey.
Tom did it against Sergey.
When he won the injury, he was injured.
Such a bad decision from Tom, by the way. I'm so glad it paid off, but I was so
great decision from our future champ.
Yes.
But he's very, very protective. As soon as a fighter came along at light heavyweight, that a lot of people went, "Oh, I think you've got away from one there, Jon. Dominic Reyes beat you."
Yes.
Yeah.
He went, I'm done with light heavyweight. Dana White wanted to turn around and do the rematch. Jon was like, "Nah, I'm good. Vacate." "Oh, do you want to go up and fight Francis Ngannou then?" No, I'll take my time. I'm just going to eat a few donuts and just, take my time a little bit, wait 3 years or whatever it was to go up to heavyweight. "Oh, Ngannou's gone now. I'm ready to go." Like, look, I know.
Could be coincidence.
I know. I'm being slightly kind of antagonistic and facetious here, but there's something to it. He's very, very protective of that legacy.
He is. And do you know what's, I think, baffling to a lot of MMA fans is that if you look at his last 3 fights at light heavyweight, Anthony Smith, where if Anthony Smith was a coward, he could have stayed down and he could have won the belt on a technicality. Thiago Santos was not an impressive performance. Dominic Reyes, I think, won that fight. And then Jon Jones didn't fight for 3-4 years until he fought Cyril Gane for the heavyweight championship. In that time, what did he do to mend the relationship between him and the UFC? I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden he's Dana's golden goose. He's Dana's favorite child. And that's what I think really, really frustrates and annoys MMA fans.
I'm going to pull you up on the use of the word coward there. I'm like, he got kneed in the head. There's no coward there. Aljamain Sterling was not a coward. He was losing that fight, and then Peter Yan was an absolute idiot and kneed him in the head. And look what's happened to Peter Yan. I mean, he's actually bouncing back now, but... but I mean, in terms of like sliding doors moments, like Peter Yan not throwing that knee. I mean, where is his career now? Where's Aljamain Sterling's career? Crazy.
All right, one final question on Jon Jones then. So we've talked about his legacy. So how do you think a loss at this point to Tom Aspinall would actually affect that legacy? It's a tough question, isn't it?
It is. Well, I'll go.
You go.
I think it will be huge because Jon Jones, part of his legacy is the fact that he is unbeaten. No one counts the Matt Hamill fight. And he's looking to get that taken off of his record. So Jon Jones is an unbeaten fighter, and despite the fact that we think he may have lost some fights, the Gustafsson fight or the Dominic Reyes fight, he is an unbeaten fighter. So I feel like losing to Tom Aspinall, a man that some people perceive him to be ducking, I think that does damage his legacy, because a huge part of the reason why Jon Jones is Jon Jones is that when locked in the cage, you haven't seen the man best him. And a loss of Tom Aspinall, it would only, in my opinion, would only be a knockout. Seeing Jon Jones flat on his back in the cage, I think with that image would severely damage his legacy.
That's pretty poignant there, to be fair.
I don't know how much it damages his legacy. I think that for everything he did at light heavyweight, he's then gone up and won the second belt as well. I don't think a loss to Tom Aspinall damages his legacy as much as the PED infractions and the run-ins with the law and the other horrible things he's been accused of and there's been police reports about and all that stuff. That, to me, damages his legacy way more than a legitimate loss to a surging heavyweight prospect in his prime. I mean, when you look at the kind of nitty gritty of what Aspinall versus Jones is, and the reasons why Jones doesn't want to fight Aspinall, which if I was in Jon Jones's management team, I'd be saying, yeah, mate, don't take that fight. He's in his prime. He's a natural heavyweight, which you are not. You've struggled in the past with people that are just as tall as you, like the Gustafsons and the Reyes of the world. Tom Aspinall's 6'5".
Yeah.
Like, I would be advising him to stay away from him as well. So I don't think the loss to Tom Aspinall damages his legacy too much. I actually think, in a weird way, if he fought Tom Aspinall and lost, that's less damaging to his legacy than if he avoids him.
I kind of feel like I'm on your side really there, Blake, as well, even before you both gave your answers. Because for me, Jon Jones's legacy was set in stone really within that first year when he became the youngest champion ever and then beat 5 former champions. Everything he did after that was incredibly impressive and part of like a dominant streak that you don't see from champions. But, we knew everything about how great Jon Jones was already by that point. We were like, this kid's incredible. One of the best of all time, if not the best. I agree to you. I think if he doesn't fight Tom, then we're not going to be talking about this part of his career anyway. We were just Jon Jones from 10 years from now, we'll talk about what he did at light heavyweight. The heavyweight thing probably will come up. If he fights Tom, and it depends on how the fight goes, like if he has a war with Tom and he loses, but he shows up and shows every part of his game, and, I think people would only respect that. I don't think anyone's going to come out of the woodwork and be like, Jon Jones was never any good, because the narratives about the fight are all on the table. Like, we understand Jon's at the end of his career, Tom's at the start. That's literally why this fight isn't getting made, because Jon says he's not done enough. So I think I agree with you. It depends on whose perspective you look at. I think the hardcore fans, if he does fight Tom and it's a good fight, will understand the narrative of mixed martial arts and they'll always look at this guy as one of the best. But you are right as well, because he has technically never been beaten. And the sight of him beaten completely does change everything you look back on his career. But I don't know, as someone who understands, and I'm sure you guys obviously do, fighters get older and they lose.
Yeah.
One man didn't, Habib. I mean, technically GSP didn't, right? When he got older, he did lose though. So it's kind of like, it's to be expected in a way. And I think I would rather see Jon pull the trigger, take the fight, get in there, try and be the man who you say you are, and get it done with Tom Aspinall, I think so.
Yeah.
We'll have to see though. 2025, maybe we'll get it. Maybe it will be on Netflix and be the biggest fight ever. I don't know. Something else we're probably going to see in 2025 though is the return of Conor McGregor, right? This is something a lot of people have been talking about positively and negatively, right? He was in the news headlines towards the end of the year, obviously for very negative reasons. It affected his public image. His public image was already destroyed in Ireland based on his previous infractions. But you are right in that he has held, I think, 8 of the top 10 pay-per-view sales of all time. But the question is, the first question really is, does the UFC need, I guess, Conor McGregor anymore to continue to move forward?
I don't think so. I don't think they need Conor McGregor. Would it be nice to have a Conor McGregor? Would it be nice to have
would it be nice?
Yeah, the Conor McGregor that we saw going on a tear at featherweight, incredible on the mic, so sharp, so witty. Just if you were to build an MMA fighter in a lab, that's what it'd be. It'd be an Irish guy who's got crazy tattoos,
An Irish guy, yeah.
incredible on the mic, and when he gets into the cage, he does what he says he's going to do. But I feel like we touched on it. We're talking about Jon Jones. We're talking about the pay-per-view model. The UFC's in a very different place right now, where they're not beholden to the numbers of the pay-per-view buyers, and so Conor McGregor is not as integral to the company as he was previously. There was a reason why after the Alvarez fight, Dana White decided to partner with Conor McGregor to allow him to fight Floyd Mayweather, because he was so integral to the business that they couldn't allow him to go elsewhere and make money without the UFC.
He was asking for a bit of the business as well. Then he wanted a percentage of the business.
I remember the press conference afterwards. He goes, "They need to come and talk to me. They need to come and talk to me." And that was when he was at his absolute apex. That was Conor McGregor at his highest. Conor McGregor right now, after the losses to Poirier, after the infractions away from the cage, it's a very different prospect. Don't get it twisted. Conor McGregor comes back to UFC and he sleepwalks to 1 million pay-per-view buys if it's still a pay-per-view model when he next fights. But the UFC will still carry on without Conor McGregor. And I think testament to that is 2024. It was a great year for the company and he was nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an easy answer, Ryan. I would say no, they don't need him. And I'm just going to pull out my economics degree again and talk about the fact that, TKO merger happened a couple of, what was it, like a year and a half ago or whatever
Something
it
like
was.
that, yeah.
Before that, WME took the company, the UFC over in 2016.
About 4.
And McGregor's had 4 fights in about 8 years. And I think the biggest star the UFC has is those 3 letters, is the UFC. Because during that whole time, the company was bought by WME in 2016 for $4 billion.
Yeah.
Then the TKO merger happened and they were valued at 11 point something billion. And that valuation is estimated to have gone up just over the last year or so. During which time in the TKO era, Conor hasn't fought at all.
No.
If anything, he's done things to bring the company down by his actions outside of the cage. So they definitely don't need him. I mean, just to also throw something at you, the UFC have broken Fight Night gate records with the likes of Derek Lewis versus Rodrigo Nascimento.
It's true.
Like, who cares about Derek Lewis versus
but the
Rodrigo
tickets are really
Nascimento?
expensive.
No, that's exactly it, Alex. I hate hearing about the gate because you're just telling me about inflation. You're just telling me that you're charging people for the same size arena more money for tickets. It
True.
just, to me, it doesn't represent the sport growing. It just means that, maybe people are more willing to pay more money for the tickets, but that's not a reflection of the growth of the sport for me, anyway.
By how are you measuring the growth of the sport? Like, we as fans of the sport, true fans of the sport, yes, we want to see it grow in all sorts of really fun ways and exciting ways, but the companies and the shareholders, the people that make the decisions, they want it to grow and they need it to grow financially. So when we're talking about, does the UFC need anyone? Conor, Jon Jones, Sean O'Malley, Ilia Topuria, they don't need anyone. Because those 3 letters will get you record-breaking Fight Night gates with Derek Lewis versus Rodrigo Nascimento. So it doesn't matter who they have.
And that is all true of 2025, though. But, we have to estimate that, 3 years with no stars and fight nights that are expensive and sell out gates but don't deliver in terms of performance and star power. Eventually, that narrative might change. But I think you're completely right. As of right now, they've developed new stars. They went through a period of being in the apex with a lot of their shows, and they've come out the other side of that. Like you said, Blake, now selling and making records. Obviously, the tickets are expensive, but they went from having no fans to having more fans watch their sport than ever. And obviously, they had this incubation period throughout the coronavirus, really, that I think had all eyes on them, didn't it, really, at that point as well?
So 100%. And I know this is a different conversation to what we previously had, but when you're talking about, important in terms of important fights, when you think about the Gaethje Ferguson fight during the midst of lockdown, that's where the UFC, in terms of exponential growth, really went like that. When every other sport was locked down and they weren't playing sport, or they weren't boxing, they weren't doing anything, Dana White took the risk and said he's gone to Ireland. We all imagined something completely different to what they actually gave us, but that and what they did during lockdown meant that the company grew to a point where they're at right now. And so I don't think Conor McGregor is integral to the UFC's model, but the UFC is not here without Conor McGregor. Back in the day when they did get sold for $4 billion, I think he was a huge part of that. I think you halved the valuation about Conor McGregor when they sold at that point. But like Blake touched on and outlined, the numbers since then are ridiculous in terms of valuation of the company, and that's been without Conor McGregor.
Yeah, it's true.
I agree. I think historically, Conor has been vital to that company in terms of its growth globally and all that stuff. But currently they just don't need him anymore. I think you can kind of there's certain little markers in the UFC's history that have just given it a huge bump. And it's like the Zuffa takeover, the Ultimate Fighter finale, the Stephan Bonner, who was the other side? Forrest Griffin. Yeah, that fight. Ronda Rousey, I think, coming into the UFC did a bit more.
Big bump.
Conor, obviously, and then I think you're absolutely right. I think it's that COVID kind of fight with Gaethje and Ferguson when everything else was shut down and it was the only live sporting event you could watch. That so many new fans came to the UFC in that moment. I don't know what the next moment's going to be, but I think you're absolutely right. That was an incredibly important fight for the UFC.
I don't think we can have this conversation and just not acknowledge that the stars are incredibly important for the growth of the sport. The sport was incrementally bumped by the appearance of stars: Chuck Liddell, Brock Lesnar, Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor. They all elevated the sport individually as they went. Without them, the UFC would not grow. So I think the UFC does need its stars, but do they need Conor McGregor anymore?
And where the UFC really benefits is when the stars are willing to fight. People forget that when Conor McGregor was in his pomp, he was fighting very regularly, every 3 or 4 months. What did Alex Pereira do last year to be fighter of the year? Fought regularly. And I think the UFC is reliant on their stars to take fights in not ideal circumstances. How many times have we seen the fights that we don't really, not that we don't want to see, but they're not the fights that we plan to see because of a dropout or a pullout? They do still require their stars to sign on the dotted line and say yes to fighting. And when they don't have that, that's where you see them in a little bit of trouble. But right now, they've got fighters who are willing to fight. And that's why I think Jon Jones stands out so much, because he's the one superstar that isn't willing to take on any man, any time, any place.
That's true. All right. Question then, because this one was asked and we had a little chat about it earlier, and I think we should ask it. If Conor came back, who do you think he could beat? Like the highest up the rankings, lightweight or welterweight, who's the guy he's going to beat? I'm going to go, I think he could probably have a good fight with Dan Hooker, who's ranked number 6, I think, at lightweight. But I don't know. Hooker might end up beating him because Hooker's a bit of an animal, and that would be a dogfight. And if it goes 5 rounds, I don't know. If you look at the rankings, though, people at home could do this as well. Take a look at the rankings. But go on, Blake.
No, I would favour Hooker in that fight for sure. I think can Conor win? Maybe, but Hooker's chin, man. And Conor might light him up for a round or so, and then Hooker just comes on strong. I mean, look what Hooker did against Jalen Turner, man.
I take it
unreal.
back. I mean, he can't put Hooker away. And Hooker's got great calf kicks as well, and he probably just calf kicked their shit. Well, the hell out of Conor. I don't know if we're swearing on this mother.
At lightweight is just murderer's row if you look at the top 10.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at welterweight, though, which realistically, Conor's never going to fight at 155.
I think you're right.
Again.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I look at welterweight and I look down the rankings. Colby at number 9. I think Conor gives Colby a good fight. The wrestling is obviously going to be a big issue. But it's tough, man. He's been out of the game for so long. We don't know what type of Conor McGregor we're going to get. And stylistically, it wouldn't make sense to put him in Colby. It'd be incredible on the mic. It'd be incredible pre-fight, but Colby's wrestling would just be a bit too much for Conor. But there is not many people. Do you know what? I'm looking at it. Stephen Thompson, Wonderboy.
Wonderboy would be fun.
Wonderboy would be really fun.
I think Wonderboy would win, though, to be fair.
I don't know what I'm hearing here. The fact that you're saying Colby Covington and Stephen Wonderboy Thompsons are fights that you think Conor could win. There's no way, man. I think both of them would eat him up, no problem.
Wonderboy's is Wonder Man. He's an old man right now.
You're right, but Conor's no spring chicken anymore. And having been out of the cage for so long, and there's certain videos out there on the internet, guys, that you can look at, and he doesn't look like he's in the best mindset and shape and all these things. I mean, I'm looking down the rankings at lightweight. There's not a single fight in the whole top 15 that I would favour him in.
Like, confidently.
I do think that a big fight you could make that he could win, but probably wouldn't, but it would be huge, is Paddy Pimblett. That's a fight where I would go, you're laughing. What do you not think?
I don't disagree that it would be massive. It's just like, I mean, to be fair, it wouldn't be, when you hear it, you're like, that's crazy. But then if they actually booked it, it's not actually that crazy, really.
What do you think's crazy about it, in all seriousness?
Really. Well, just because the mismatch in terms of profile between the two guys and what they've done and achieved. But
there's a mismatch between Conor and anyone.
Paddy has not lost yet, right? So he's still at a position, he's just fought Tony Ferguson. He's still at a position where a veteran fight against a legacied guy, a former champ, does make a ton of sense for Paddy. And for Conor, it's like, well, who else? We've just talked ourselves out of like 20 opponents for Conor.
Who's the biggest star Conor could fight and actually on the kind of betting lines have a chance of winning?
Yeah, you got a good point. Paddy's probably up there.
Also, I take umbrage with saying Paddy hasn't lost that. You lost against Jared Gordon.
Fair enough. I mean, technically he didn't. When you first said Paddy, I laughed. I was like, no, but then you're like, it kind of makes sense. Yeah, it kind of does make sense. Yeah.
I mean, outside of Paddy, genuinely, the only people I'm really interested in Conor fighting is Tony Ferguson and Nate Diaz again.
Yeah.
There's not fights out there that I look at for Conor and I go, I want to see that fight.
Mike Perry and BKFC.
Well, there's that. There's all of that as well.
I don't know if that would be that good. Yeah. No, well, there you go. Well, it kind of tells us all where we're at with Conor going into 2025, really. And the more we talked about it, the more I was like, we're kind of talking ourselves out of enjoying any of these fights with Conor. So it's like, and also even that anticipated for it, you know?
And that's not even just on a sporting point of view. Given everything that's gone on with the civil case and all of that, if I never see Conor McGregor fight again, I'm perfectly fine with it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Do you know what? I said before that he was the person who got me into MMA. It's so sad because I'm a huge football fan, right? Football's my main sport.
Boo.
But don't boo me.
Get the hell out of here.
But I honestly, there is no athlete that has ever made me feel the way Conor McGregor made me feel for a good 2 to 3 years. I was shaking in anticipation anytime he made the walk. It was must-see TV. I will tell my son about Conor McGregor and that period of time where he was just the guy. And unfortunately, because of all the transgressions outside the cage, his legacy is going to be tarnished. And it's super sad because he's the reason why the UFC is where it's at right now. And I think a lot of that will be forgotten.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
Do we think there's any legs to this Logan Paul fight supposedly going down in India? Because, you know, Conor tweeted about it, but then a ton of people have come out and just straight up dismissed it, saying it's not happened. But then over at the Misfits guys, they had a little chat, which is actually kind of spread across the internet because they were saying, oh, we got a rumor that this fight is definitely happening. So I'll hand it over to you guys. Is this going to happen, Logan Paul, Conor McGregor?
I mean, I don't care if it happens or not. I mean,
right, move on. No,
I won't watch it. No. I won't watch it. Has it got legs? Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to remember the name of the family. Is it Ambani
Yeah,
family?
something like that. An Indian
Something like that. If I've
family.
mispronounced it, I'm sorry. I can't remember the name of the family. But if they've got the kind of money that everyone's saying they've got, and Logan Paul and Conor McGregor both under that TKO umbrella as well, with Logan Paul being a WWE star and all that stuff, TKO, if they've got a cut of all of that money, could make a small fortune for doing maybe very little.
Yeah.
They're just signing off on these guys going and doing it, and that's it. So, well, it could happen. It could happen. I don't want to watch it. If it
won't
was
even
on,
be a
I
real
wouldn't be
fight.
interested.
It won't be a real fight, will it? It was like
No,
an
it'd be an
exhibition fight against
exhibition fight.
Mayweather. It's not going to be a real fight against Conor. There's no way.
No, but as you say, these things seem to get people interested. I wasn't interested in Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. People watched it.
Yeah, no, I just won't watch it. I didn't watch Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. I watched the highlights afterwards. Those kind of fights just don't inspire me, don't entertain me because there's never really a winner afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, there's never really a
Where are the
conclusive end
stakes?
to it, and there's no stakes. And Logan Paul's absolutely massive. I'm a sadder. I'm still into WWE. Logan Paul's very good at wrestling. He's
He
massive.
is pretty
but
athletic.
He's very athletic, but
Yep.
he is so much bigger than Conor McGregor. It just looked like a joke. I know Conor McGregor, he put on a lot of size. I don't know how he went about putting on that size, but he's just
That's true.
yeah.
Well, Conor fought the mountain. Remember that?
I do remember that.
From the start. I think you're right. Well, I think that just round us, you know, I think we're more hardcore fans anyway. It's not going to be MMA, you know, and we've already kind of just said we're not really that interested in the rest of McGregor's career, not on a personal level anyway. So I signs that one off. All right, fun game to play before we end this first episode. We're going to have a look at the rankings right now in the UFC. Each division, the men's division, will start from flyweight. We'll make our way up, even though I'm going down. And I want you guys to give me who you think is going to be champion at the end of the year in each weight class. So starting with flyweight, obviously the champion right now is Alejandro Pantoja. Blake, let's start with you. Is he still going to have the belt at the end of the year?
This is only a tricky one because of Pantoja's age. And we all know that,
Exactly
you
what I
know,
was
is he
gonna say.
about 34 or something?
34, yeah.
You don't get 35-year-olds that are champs lower than welterweight.
Valentina Shevchenko.
Well, in the men's divisions. In the men's
There you go.
divisions.
Yep,
You're
yep,
absolutely
that's
right
fine,
to pull
that's
me
fine.
up on that. You're absolutely right to pull me up on that. Yeah, I'm going to stick with Pantoja because I just don't know who he fights. And there's a possibility that he only defends the belt once.
Sure.
Like if he fights like a Kai Kara France or a Manel Cap, both fights I think he can win. Maybe he goes up in weight. Maybe he does something like that because there's not a huge amount left for him to do in his own division. And I believe bantamweight could get a little bit sticky after a while as well. So there's an opportunity for him to potentially go up in weight. So I'm going to have to stick with Pantoja.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Pantoja as well. Good wins over Urseg and Asakura. And I look at the division, the flyweight division, and I don't really see it. How many times have you seen Brandon Moreno fight for the belt? I think that fight will probably happen towards the back end of the year.
Yeah.
But I don't really see, I'm with Blake, I don't really see who really challenges him at flyweight. And I have to get Mo Makayev back in the UFC. Get Mo Makayev. Get him back in the UFC. But yeah, I'm going Pantoja this one.
I would have said Al-Bazi, maybe, because he's still 31, but his performance against Moreno wasn't that inspiring. Yeah, so it's hard to say. And for Pantoja, the grappling, you got to then look at contenders who will be able to negate that. And a lot of the other top contenders are all strikers. Yeah. I just don't think they'll be able to find an answer for that. So I
do think Moreno has a chance, but having had 2 losses to him already, I just think that the way that Moreno wins is if he keeps improving and Pantoja starts to come off the gas because he's getting that bit older, then he can win it. And if they made Moreno Pantoja at the end of the year, 100% Moreno could win that fight. Their most recent fight was very, very close. But I've got to lean Pantoja.
All right, bantamweight, Merab has the belt currently. We know he's fighting Umar. Who are we thinking?
Umar. And again, it's boring. And there's a conversation about Dagestani fighters and are they making the sport boring? But Umar's just so dominant. An ill-advised fight to take for Corey Sandhagen, but Umar dealt with him. And I think he deals with Merab later this month. And I think Umar will hold that belt at bantamweight for a long time.
I'm agreeing with everything you're saying there. That Sandhagen fight just made me go, wow. Even though it was actually close in a lot of ways, but every round was just edged by Umar. So he got like a 50-45 or whatever it was. You can't do that to Corey Sandhagen and not be the best guy in the division. So I love Sandhagen. He's my tall, skinny brother from another mother.
He's got a great YouTube channel as well, Corey Sandhagen. He's probably my favorite fighter's YouTube channel. Very, very good breakdowns.
Yeah. So, but I've got to go Umar.
Umar, I'm probably going to say Umar as well. I think he probably will give Merab a good fight. I reckon he's got the wrestling game to keep that fight standing and probably just utilize the striking. But I think we're all feeling Umar. The Nurmagomedov legacy continues. So at featherweight, currently it's Ilia Topuria. Now the question isn't, will Ilia Topuria still be champion? I think the question really is he going to go up a weight class and is he still going to be there? So what do you guys think?
I don't think he moves up. I don't think. I think that's all bluster and whatever. Like to lose those championship kind of pay-per-view points and all that stuff. And who knows? As you've been saying, the model could change, and maybe we'll see something very different happen. But he's hardly cleaned out the division. I know he's got 2 amazing wins, and he was my fighter of the year, despite Alex Pereira. But after Alex Pereira knocked out Khalil Roundtree, I got a lot of flack off people from my show saying that I think Topuria is going to be the fighter of the year, despite and this was prior to the Max Holloway fight. I got so much flack for that. And then I think a lot of people still picked him. He was my fighter of the year.
Yeah, we had him.
Blake, I completely agree with you. I even said the winner of the Max versus Ilya fight is the fighter of the year. Yeah, because the way that Max obviously finished in the UFC 300, he finished Justin Gaethje. Yeah. The winner of that fight was going to be the fighter of the year. I get it what Alex Pereira did and the fact that he stood in and he jumped in at late notice. But Ilya versus Max was the fight. And Ilya dispatched the Max and did something that no one has ever done to Max Holloway. Like, he's a special talent. I don't see anybody in the 145 division taking the belt.
No, I agree. Topuria is indomitable.
Shout out to Diego Lopez. We'll see. Yeah, I like him.
That was my question, because I was like, maybe Ilya does go up to lightweight just because that's what Conor did. He's been trying to model his career after him, and that's literally what he's been saying. If he does, then I've got Movsar and I've got... I don't know, because it would be a rematch against Diego. And Movsar has just looked so dominant and no one's really found like a consistent way to take rounds off him. But I think it's going to be Ilya. So
I'm pulling you up there. Movsar has not looked dominant because Arnold Allen beat him. Arnold Allen beat him fair and square, and he was shafted by those judges.
It's true. It was, look, you could definitely agree with that. And I think at the time, I probably thought Allen won. But the point I'm saying by dominant is, he's just got like an aspect to his game which people haven't got an answer for. And until they do, he'll just switch into that and it'll be very hard to beat him. So anyway, right. Lightweight, Islam Makhachev, still the champ. Is he going to have the belt before the end of the year? Probably, right? Unless Arman, first challenge, first pay-per-view of the year as well, was in 2 weeks. We're going to get a great fight. So give me a prediction for that fight first, guys.
I think go on. You go, Craig.
I think stylistically, this is the most difficult fight for Islam in terms of defending his title. Again, I don't want to disrespect Volk, but Volk was coming up. Volk is tiny for lightweight, but put on an incredible fight in the first time round and then got head kicked and never looked the same since in the second fight. I loved Islam versus Dustin Poirier. I thought that was an incredible fight, despite the fact that Islam was relatively dominant all the way through. It was just you were gripped by that fight.
Amazing fight.
I think Sarukian will give him problems, but Islam's just too dominant. I would argue that his wrestling is more dominant than Khabib's, and I think that he he wins against Armand.
I'm leaning Islam, but I think Arman is his toughest fight, and I think it's not Islam's wrestling, but his striking and his kind of defensive abilities on the feet that will pull him through most opponents. I think I was really surprised in that first Volk fight. Volk surprised everyone, was like, oh my God, he's dealing with Islam's wrestling, except that fourth round when he was like chatting away and got taken down, which was so annoying. But other than that, Islam on the feet is actually really underrated. And I do think Arman is the outside of Jones Aspinall, maybe Arman versus Islam is the best fight the UFC can make in terms of like it's just the caliber of mixed martial arts you're going to see. Bang on number one versus champ. You're not going to get anything more level and kind of that kind of just pure MMA than Arman Sarukian versus Islam Makhachev. I'm super excited about that fight.
Yeah. That's a good breakdown for that one. And that's pretty much spot on, I think, of how it's going to go. We talk about the development of Islam striking. He's just sitting southpaw now and just bodying people with those kicks. That kicking game of his has come a long way. He used that a lot in the first Volk fight as well. But southpaw body kick, southpaw head kick, I think, against Arman, who doesn't really kick very often and usually takes advantage of someone else's kicking game to chain his wrestling. But that's why Islam kicks so much, because he doesn't mind getting taken down. So I think it's probably going to be a kickboxing strategy on the outside. I agree. It's going to be a great fight, though, to start the year. Number one versus a champion. I love it. So let's do welterweight, because we've got a couple more. Obviously, Bilal Muhammad. How could you forget that he's champion? You've got to remember his name. I almost did in the screen in front of him. So he's champ right now. Obviously, everyone is looking towards Rakhmonov to get that shot. And that is a really fun stylistic matchup. Question is, though, who will be champ at the end of the year? Let's start with you, Blake.
I've got to go Shavkat. The only worry I have is this MCL injury that Cormier was saying he had. If it's true that he's got an MCL, will he be out for a while? Will Bilal have to fight someone else instead? And then how long does Bilal wait before fighting again? Islam maybe keeps talking about wanting to move up in weight. So if Shavkat fights for the belt, he ends the year as champion. But it's just whether Shavkat gets to fight for the belt before the end of the year, which I'm thinking he will, but you never know.
See, I had Shavkat originally, and we've agreed on all of the champions so far, but I think this is where we're going to disagree. I think that Bilal's performance against Leon is kind of been forgotten about. The wrestling was so dominant, obviously,
and the pressure,
and again in the last round faced a little bit of adversity and came through that. Obviously wrestling with Khabib, and he's I think he's underrated. I think because he's not the most likable champion, I think he is underrated. And maybe it's because off the back of Shavkat not looking amazing against Ian Gary, because every time you see Shavkat in the cage, you expect him to finish his opponent. He didn't against Gary, but I'm going for Bilal. I think Bilal ends the year as champion. I think that he goes on a nice little run in 2025.
I like that, because I do like Bilal Muhammad, man. He's sneaky underrated, has been for a long time. And I think one of the most powerful things about him is his mindset. He is one of those guys who, like Khabib, is so disciplined. Like, his life is about his sport and his religion, and that's it. And that's all he does. And there's no distractions for Bilal. I don't think there's any distractions for Shavkat, to be honest, either. But I agree with you. I think his mindset is that of a champion. However, Shavkat Rakhmonov, man, I don't know, man. I think I'm going to pick Shavkat just because of the diversity of his striking arsenal. I reckon when they stand toe-to-toe on the feet, it's interesting because Leon versus Bilal 1 was a very different fight. And, Leon was getting off those kicks quite nicely. And I expect Shavkat to do the same. But I don't know. The game planning of Bilal, I don't have to make a pick. I'm just going to let you guys do it. It's fine. So we're good. All right, middleweight.
I'm obviously not changing my pick, but dark horse Joaquin Buckley. What are the chances? I mean, he could sneak into a title shot if someone drops out. Available. He could sneak in, and that guy's got power, and he's really improved. I've been really impressed with Joaquin Buckley this year.
He's opened up the doors to what he needed to do to just get better as a well-rounded athlete, and now he's the kind of guy who will use his wrestling to win a fight because he understands that's the best way to fight in MMA. I don't know how his total skill set matches up against someone like the champ, but when it comes to mentality, I'd say Buckley's way up there as well, because he's like a driven guy. It's almost like all of the insults just spurred him on even further. To just say, screw you guys, I will be as good as you guys say I can't be. So we'll see. All right, let's do middleweight. Dricus du Plessis is the champion, and this is a tough one, guys, I think, because DDP is so unpredictable. Like, he's one of those guys that people want to doubt, and you can constantly doubt, but he has shown up every single time. And plus, at 185, we have a row of killers waiting, right?
And you talk about mindset, and Dricus, his mindset is absolutely elite. He goes in there believing he's going to beat everybody. We'll see how the Strickland rematch goes, because I think how that goes determines who is the champion at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I think the Dricus gives Hamzat problems, and Hamzat's who we're really talking about when we talk about people waiting in the wings. Yeah. After what he did to Robert Whittaker, breaking his face, I feel like he
like 2 minutes.
He reminded people why everyone was so excited when he first came onto the scene. The problem with Hamzat is he going to fight? How regularly is he going to fight? Can they rely on him to be the champion, to defend his belt on a regular basis? But if
can't get into America, can he? Sorry to interrupt you, but he can't even go to America, can he?
Exactly. He can only fight in certain regions. And so that's the one spanner in the works. But I'm going to go for Hamzat, but I've got a little dark horse. Caio Barrio, I feel like, is on a nice little tear. And if, say Hamzat doesn't fight and you get the winner of Strickland versus DDP, I think the Caio comes in there and probably beats the winner. So yeah, I'll go Hamzat, but there are so many different caveats in it.
Yeah. This is a really interesting division. I think I the original fight between Strickland and DDP, I scored for Strickland.
Right.
But I do think Dricus will win this one. And I think it's everything you said, Alex, about like, is Hamzat going to get his shot? Is he going to be able to get past all the health issues he sometimes has? But also these visa issues. Does that mean that Dricus has to say, yes, I'll fight him in Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi? What if Dricus goes, probably. No, I don't want to do. Dricus wants to fight in South Africa. Yeah. He wants to do that. Like, what if he just goes, no, I'm not fighting him there. Absolutely not. And then Hamzat's just left on the shelf for a bit longer. So it's a risky pick picking Hamzat to be your champ by the end of the year.
Yeah, to like region lock your champion is, I don't think it's ever happened, which is weird as well. I mean, 185 as a like, don't forget, Imovov has come back looking great. He's fighting Izzy. If he beats Izzy, he might get a title shot this year. And who the hell knows how Imovov's going to look, because he's another guy who's kind of refined that game.
Yeah.
Quick question before we move on though: who has a better chance of beating Hamzat, DDP or Sean Strickland?
DDP.
I agree. Cool.
Yeah. He's just such a weird style. How do you prepare for DDP? I don't know.
It's true, man. Yeah. He's just strong as heck, dude. I want to see them grapple. I want to see the strength of Hamzat go up against that strength that DDP clearly has. And I hope we get to see it this year. Right, light heavyweight. Alex Pereira is the champ. Who's left for him at 205 at this point is really the question, lads. There are a few people, but I'll let you go.
Well, what a 2024 he had. He done Jamal Hill at UFC 300 with an incredible knockout, an incredible celebration afterwards. He done Yuri Prohaska. He gave Khalil Roundtree a facelift. Again, it's probably harsh that I don't have him as my fighter for 2024, but you can definitely make an argument for it. And it seems like the boring answer to go with, but I just think that if Ankalaev says he's going to do what he is going to do and is going to try and strike Alex Pereira, then there is no chance that Ankalaev wins that fight. I don't think he does strike with him. I think he does try to wrestle him. But I think that Pereira finds a way to get the job done. He's just that good, that elite, and such a special talent that we're getting to witness.
I've done a show similar to this, picking champions for the last 3 years. And I have picked Magomed Ankalaev every single year in this division, and it's never happened. And I can't back out now. I'm locked in. I have to be right one of these years. Magomed Ankalaev, champ by the end of 2025. I do think he's been the best light heavyweight on the planet for a long time. I just feel like matchups and bad luck and different things have just not served him. And also, I just don't think the UFC likes him. After that performance with Jan Blachowicz, which you could say Ankalaev won, but it ended in a draw, Dana White has just not liked Ankalaev at all. And I think that's
he did
really
turn down a fight as well. I think that's why they don't like him.
And then the weird fight with Johnny Walker, and then obviously he done the job in the rematch, and then the Rakic fight wasn't amazing. Like, I do feel for Ankalaev because he is such a great fighter, but weird things happens when he gets to the point. If they do get in the cage, it's going to be an exciting fight, but I do think Pereira just gets it done.
I think we need that one for the stylistic matchup at this point, really. And Pereira's already kind of, if you're the UFC and you wanted to milk a guy as a champion, as a knockout artist, it's like, we've done that now. You got to give him we've done that now. If there's anyone in that division who might be able to eventually challenge Alex on the feet, let's say he beats Ankalaev, or at the end of the year, he's got a new contender. Do you see anyone in that division? Because I'm looking at a super dark horse in Carlos Ulberg.
Yes.
If Carlos Ulberg gets 3 more wins this year, he's with Israel Adesanya. Like, they've game planned for Alex 5 times. Like, that's the best camp to come out of if you're going to fight this guy. And he legitimately is a very crafty, athletic, powerful striker.
I really like Carlos Ulberg. I think he's very, very good. And the Izzy connection as well, I think could be very important if he were to ever fight Alex Pereira. I think the other thing is, if Alex Pereira were to get past Magomed Ankalaev, I just think he moves up to heavyweight. Yeah. So I think that could throw it wide open.
Sure, yeah.
To anyone. If Alex Pereira goes, I'll beat Ankalaev in April or May, and then after that, I really want to fight either Jon or Tom. And we might have a situation where Jon wants to sit out, and the only fight for Tom Aspinall is Alex Pereira coming up in weight or something like that. I mean, there's also a world in which Alex Pereira has won all these fights and he doesn't win a single fight in 2025 because he gets beat by Ankalaev, moves up to heavyweight, gets beat by someone at heavyweight. That would be quite an interesting turn of events if he's gone from 3 wins to no wins.
But that happens when fighters go on an incredible tear. They have an amazing year. Like, you think about like a Volk or an Usman. Then the next year, for some reason, it just goes like that. So I do think I think Pereira is a special talent, and I think we have to appreciate what we're seeing right now, and I don't think anybody touches him in the light heavyweight division in 2025.
Yeah, nor do I. No, we're right at the end of the year, but we'll see. All right, we've got one men's division left. We'll just stick with that. Is Jon Jones at the heavyweight champion? We've been talking about this since the start of the day. So, question is, if Jon fights again, whoever he fights, will he still be holding the belt at the end of the year?
I don't know, man. I don't know. This is such a tough one because, we're all homers, right? We all know who we want to have the belt. But it's Jon freaking Jones. Like, he's the baddest man on the planet. And until I see it, I don't know if I can believe it. But because it is Tommy Aspinall, I'm going with Tom Aspinall. It's heart over head, but I wouldn't put too much money on it.
Okay, go on, Blake.
Yeah, I'll go Tom as well. I'm convinced that if Tom and Jon step in the cage together, Tom wins. I'm convinced. I really believe he's got too much for him. Natural heavyweight, knockout power, quick movement, can match up on the grappling as well. I mean, I really want to see Jon's wrestling against Tom's BJJ as well and just see what happens there. But I think on the feet, Tom's got enough for him to deal with him and maybe even deal with him quickly as well. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting carried away, but I do think he can do it.
Man, I don't know, because we haven't really seen Tom against anyone you could compare to Jon Jones. I mean, not to say that he hasn't beaten good guys. Tom's beaten great guys, but Jon's just a different. There's a reality in my brain where I'm like, they could get in the cage together and Jon could just keep him at distance and then easily out grapple him like he did with everybody he's ever fought. Because Jon looks like Superman when he takes people down, and then he just kills them, and you're like, I think it's just pointless. But I think no matter what, Jon is probably not going to be holding the title at the end of the year, because I think he's probably going to retire by the end of the year. So that's my pick. I don't know. I think this is the last year we see Jon Jones compete in mixed martial arts. Maybe there's something else happens afterwards, like an exhibition fight or something crazy. But I think this might be it. 2025, the last year of JBJ, and he probably will have one fight and go out undefeated, and that'll be it, most likely.
And then he will box Logan Paul.
Jon Jones can't really box, though. That's the thing. He's not.
Hey, man,
no danger of that. There's no danger of Jon Jones boxing anybody, I don't think. So there we go. All right, lads. Well, I mean, that was great. I mean, we had a lot to talk about today. I think we've all had a good time. Jon Jones versus Aspinall is probably, if we're all crossing our fingers, we may get made this year. But I think there was something else we were supposed to talk about. Oh yes. Okay, so we touched on this briefly about last year. But in 2025, have you got a prediction early for Fighter of the Year? You want to make a next year Fighter of the Year prediction?
Ooh. Based on how dominant I expect him to be, but again, the bantamweight division doesn't get as much shine as it probably should. But I think Umar's going to have a dominant year.
Okay, Umar.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a dominant year.
I like that. I definitely think Umar could come out and get 3 good wins. He's got the skills to dominate in every area of the game. So,
yeah.
Blake's thinking this.
I'm thinking about this. I'm going to maybe piggyback slightly on your thoughts here because I think getting a fight in early is big because you can fight maybe 3 times a year. So I'm going to go for Islam Makhachev.
Ooh, okay.
Because I think if he beats Arman, then the next fight's up in that division, whether it's Oliveira, Max Holloway, you know, whatever it is that's thrown his way, I think he can deal with. If he were to go up in weight, maybe he gets a win there. That would be good. I mean, I sort of wanted to say Khamzat Chimaev, but you just can't trust him. But if he wins the belt and then gets one defense in, I think everyone will be, especially if he wins it in the kind of fashion he's been winning fights in, Khamzat Chimaev will be right up there as fighter of the year. I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough one, but I'm going to go Islam Makhachev.
All right, Islam Makhachev, Umar. I like both those picks. Yeah, I think Islam's a safe pick. I think the Khamzat one would be a little crazy. I mean, listen, DDP could do some crazy stuff next year, and we could all be singing his praises. But all right, well, either way, guys, please let us know down below the answers to all these questions we've had today. And the whole point of this show is to have a debate amongst ourselves, but also to include all of you guys as well. So let us know your fighter of the year, predictions for champions as well. I'm sure all of you guys probably also agree that you're not really bothered about watching Conor McGregor fight, and maybe I shouldn't say that, but I think that's the truth at this stage, isn't it, really?
I think so.
So, yeah, definitely let us know on all the talking points that we had today as well. And, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of Talk MMA here on the TalkSPORT channel. We think we all had a good time, lads, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so thank you to all the team involved, obviously myself, Alex Ritchings, Blake Harrison, Kweku Afari there as well. So thank you all for joining us. Don't forget to catch Uncaged as well with Brendan Loughnane and Adam Catterall. That goes up every single week. Plenty of interviews and fun stuff there. But we look forward to seeing you next time on Talk MMA, guys. Have a good week and enjoy the start of the UFC New Year.
On AM, on DAB, via the TalkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. TalkSPORT.